Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. I'm Ahmed O'Keefe, host of the NYCMC Business Incubator's virtual business program. Of course, you know the NYCMC. It's a 501c3 nonprofit organization and home to one of the fastest growing Muslim communities in New York City, serving 1,200 plus members every week. Branches include the Isa ibn Maryam Masjid, the Wellspring School, a full-time school for children, FCAT Institute, teaching Arabic and Islamic studies, the NYCMC Foster Care program, the NYCMC Angels providing COVID relief, the Hatebusters, a national anti-islamophobia campaign, and of course the NYCMC Incubator program. Now, the goal of the Incubator program is to provide the mentorship, expertise, and network needed to help new and amplify current entrepreneurs. This virtual business program is aimed to help us sharpen our skills and business knowledge. It is a 10-week program. Tonight is session 6. We're going to go for about an hour. Our speaker is going to present for around 40 minutes, and then we're going to open it up to Q&A on YouTube and on the Zoom. There is a link in Zoom if you're on YouTube to join us here on Zoom. So please come and join us, but behave yourselves during the presentation. So we're going to have our speaker present for about 40 minutes. We are blessed today to have Towfiek, who is a territory manager for Medline Industries and founder and executive director of Salam Sports NYC. Brooklyn born and raised, son of Egyptian immigrants, Adam started teaching and coaching high school after graduating from the University of Buffalo. In 2014, he made a major career transition as he went from educating adolescents in a classroom to educating in the operating room to world-class orthopedic and spine surgeons as a healthcare professional, a world he knew nothing about. Through trial and error, he learned with the startup distributorship, MSF, where he was very successful. He has since moved to top-tier device company, Medline Industries, where he has been the territory manager in the New York City metro area for 4 years. He's going to address us tonight on the topic of closing the deal, with lessons learned in developing as a salesperson and landing clients for a startup. Brother Adam, please.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah walhamdulillah wa salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Thank you so much for the introduction, Brother Ahmed. As you mentioned, for all the viewers out there, my name is Towfiek, and I currently work for Medline Industries, a medical device manufacturer and distributor. I made the transition over from an education background. So I started off as a teacher coming out of college. I taught for about 4 years at the high school level, taught both history and a biology class. And I was also simultaneously coaching boys varsity basketball at the high school level in one of the more competitive leagues in all of Brooklyn for Canarsie High School as a head coach, and at the High School of Telecommunications as an assistant coach. Was an extremely gratifying profession, you know, being in the classroom, affecting change, working with the youth, and having that impact on, frankly, teenagers that weren't far younger than I was at the time. Coming out of college, I was about 22 or 23 years old when I started teaching. And I was teaching kids that were about 17, 18 years old. So I was able to develop that rapport with them and have that relationship with them where they were able to trust me and really confide in me. And I was able to see their progress over time. Fast forward to 2014, I think it was actually December of 2013. I was in a position professionally where I wasn't, you know, I didn't feel fulfilled from a professional standpoint. Again, I loved being in the classroom. I loved teaching, but there was something going on that, you know, I wasn't too comfortable with. So I wanted to make a transition professionally. I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I knew that I wanted to do something different than what I was doing at the time. A friend of a friend at the time had reached out to me and, you know, kind of asked me where I was professionally and what I was planning to do moving forward. And I told him, hey, you know, I'm looking to transition out of education. I don't know what I want to do, but I know that I want to do something different. What I did know was that I was very good with people. I was good at building relationships. I had these innate and intuitive qualities in me that allowed me to be very successful in a classroom as an educator. And I knew there was somehow that I could translate that over to a different profession. So he said, "Hey, I'm in medical sales now. Do you know anything about medical sales?" And I told him, "Absolutely not. I'd never heard anything about it." And he told me, this is what it's about, X, Y, and Z. I have a startup distributorship. It's called Med Salesforce. He was a very high achieving medical sales rep for another distributorship that had gotten dissolved because that company had gone direct with their sales force. So he went about and started up his own startup distributorship. I made the transition selling on 100% commission. I had no base salary. I don't know why it keeps going to, there we go. I was selling on 100% commission, no base salary. I was coming from a profession where I was, making my comfortable salary of $65,000, $70,000 at the time, and great benefits, summers off. So it was all lovely and dandy. So it was certainly a high risk, high reward kind of move because I was coming and transitioning away from stability over to what was very much, sorry, is that better? So I was moving away from what I was very comfortable and stable into something that was relatively unknown to me. But I was at a point in my life where I was ready to make that transition. So that's exactly what it was. It was a high risk, high reward kind of move. My first 6 to 9 months on the job, I didn't have a dime to my name. I had to negotiate a draw, and I learned a lot.
Were you looking for that? I mean, I'm going to interrupt for just a second. That by itself is, were you looking specifically for that? Or were you just like, this is the opportunity and it's like, it was too good to pass up?
I mean, it wasn't even that it was too good to pass up because I didn't know anything about it, but it was definitely, it was a high risk move. I knew that I wanted to do something, and I think I wasn't desperate, but I was very motivated to make a move out of my, my profession as an educator.
Understood.
So again, my first 6 to 9 months on a job, I kind of had to learn a lot through trial and error. There wasn't a very traditional sales environment. There was no books that we had to read. It was a lot of me taking on the founders of the distributorship as mentors and really being a sponge and sitting there and learning and sitting in on cases. So as you mentioned, the backbone of that distributorship very early on was orthopedic and spine-based solutions. So it was me consulting and covering cases for, orthopedic and spine surgeons that were in school for hundreds of years, right? As it seems. And, they were experts at what they did. And here I am coming from being a history teacher and trying to tell an orthopedic and a spine surgeon what to do in the operating room. So, there certainly was a lot of there was a technical aspect of it and a clinical aspect where I had to open up a book, learn the anatomy of the knee, learn the anatomy of the spine. But what was even more important was a lot of the intangibles that came with the job, right? My ability to develop relationships, my emotional intelligence, my integrity. And I'm going to speak about this throughout my presentation, but a lot of these qualities that were outside of, reading a book is something that allowed me to be very successful within medical sales, especially starting off very early on with Med Salesforce. So, again, the topic for today is closing the deal. So if I could backtrack, so I transitioned out of Medline, out of Med Salesforce, and went over to Medline, where I currently am, and I've been for the past 4 years. Also, within the last 4 years, I've been fortunate to be the founder and executive director of Salam Sports NYC, which was founded on the premise to empower the youth through sports and civic engagement. So, in New York City, there aren't a lot of outlets outside of the masjid for the youth. And particularly within the Brooklyn area, there's a huge drug pandemic within our communities where there's a lot of youth that are dying from drug overdoses and things of the like, because there's no outlets for them outside of the masjid and outside of Quran classes and outside of the traditional karate classes within that, masjid dynamic where they're able to be comfortable. So, I sought to found Salam Sports and it started off very basic as being a Ramadan program where, instead of them being out in front of the masjid during Taraweeh, they'd have the gym, I'd rent out a gym, they'd come out, we'd arrange for rides with some of the older members of the community for them to come to the gym. And we'd have, 30 or 40 youth at 11 p.m. on a Friday night, and it was very unstructured initially. I added structure to it as we went along. I was able to develop different programs, different trips, different initiatives for them to get involved in, and it's been very successful so far. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept from me and also preserve all of our youth. And that's always been a passion of mine, is to empower the youth and work with them, and always pray for their preservation, inshallah. So, as we move forward into the presentation, again, the topic of today is to close the deal. Basically, sales strategies that I've been very successful at mastering that lead to closing the deal. So within sales and within medical sales, you don't just jump into closing the deal. There's a lot of steps that precede closing the deal that allow you to have a very successful close. And I think that this transcends medical sales. It goes into banking, it goes into finance, it goes into many different professions. And I think that a lot of what I'm going to say is relevant. And I think most importantly, a lot of these qualities that I'm going to mention and touch upon are prophetic, right? The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ had a lot of these qualities and embodied a lot of these qualities, and they're qualities that made him successful in terms of in terms of conveying the message of Islam. And I think that when I approach my job, I make sure that I'm very conscious of the fact that these are all prophetic qualities that I have, and that they're inspirations from the Rasulullah. So as I work through the presentation, I'm going to touch upon how and draw parallels between the qualities that I exhibit in my sales process and how that looked from a prophetic standpoint, and how the Rasulullah conveyed this and exhibited this through his messenger, inshallah. So the first quality that I think that before your ability to sell, before your product knowledge, before anything else that I'm going to mention, I think the most important thing is integrity. I think approaching customers, prospective customers, current customers, approaching the sales process in general, I think you have to approach it with a high level of integrity. So, I think, my approach has been these 5 different characteristics within integrity. So the first being belief in the solution that you're selling. So, whether I was teaching in the classroom, whether I was selling a product within the OR or to a physician, I always believed that the product that I was selling or the concept that I was teaching was noble in its essence and pure in its essence. So I had never taught anything or tried to sell anything that I didn't believe in and that I didn't believe had a high level of integrity. And I think that that's very important in terms of the sales process, is to have that firm belief and confidence in terms of the solution that you're selling when it comes to my industry, for example, that I know that the solution that I'm trying to sell to this doctor is going to impact patient care and going to impact the way that his practice is being run in terms of operational efficiencies, in terms of how it's affecting the bottom line, in terms of, from an economic standpoint, him keeping his practice afloat, or it's going to, again, the end goal being impacting patient care positively. Number 2, having the right intention. I think that within sales, it's very easy to approach something having the wrong intention. I think that intention is very key, because you get caught up so much in the dollars and the end goal and meeting quotas and making commissions that you forget the intention. And I think that is reflected very easily to the end user or to the customer that you're trying to sell a solution to, is that if you're going into it just for that sale, that quick sale, that's going to reflect right into your pitch. And I think that if you take the time to develop relationships and empathize and understand the person's world and put yourself in that person's shoes and really take time to understand the dynamic that they're living in, understanding pain points, understanding solutions that they're looking to implement into their practices or into their facilities because it impacts them positively, then I think that will reflect in your pitch. And I think that the end user or the customer will be a lot more receptive to sitting down with you and hearing what you have to say. So I think that right intention is very important. Thirdly, a big part of integrity is following through on your words. within sales, it's very easy to promise, over promise, and under deliver. I've been very conscious of the fact to under promise and over deliver. But it's very important nonetheless to follow through on your words. Don't make any promises that you cannot keep, and be a man of your word. And I think that these things are all rooted in prophetic teachings in terms of honesty. Obviously there are many hadiths throughout the life of the Prophet ﷺ, many ayahs within the Quran that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions the righteousness and the integrity in terms of being honest. And I think that in anything that we do should be very, very important to follow through on your words. Fourthly, consistency is key. I think that inconsistency again reflects in a lot of what you do. If you are consistently waking up at Fajr time, making your salah, and after that getting back to the grind, doing your research, doing your analytics, using all the modalities that you have in order to make your sales pitch that much stronger, and doing that day in and day out, you're going to see it on the back end in terms of meeting your quotas, making the commissions that you want to make, and it's going to reflect in your bank account. But not only that, consistency is also going to make for longevity in terms of your relationships that you're developing with your customers. So, in my industry, it's very easy to make a sale. I mean, even if you don't have any sales background, if you're selling a superior product, you could very easily make a one-time sale, but it's very hard to maintain relationships, for the doctor to seek you out as an expert in the field that you're in, for them to pick up the phone and say, hey, Adam, hey, Ahmed, what's the new trends in the, in the healthcare market? What can I implement into my practice to make it run more efficiently? What can I implement in my practice to generate more revenue? What can I implement in my practice to improve patient care? And once you get to that point where now physicians are picking up the phone to ask you for advice, that you're doing something right. And I think that that's very much rooted in consistency. And I think consistency and diligence, which is the last point, work hand in hand. Being diligent at your job, grinding, out hustling your competitors, out hustling, whoever it is you're looking to out hustle, outsmarting people. So, I'll give you an example. The founder of the distributorship that I work for, Med Salesforce, if you meet him, he's not necessarily outgoing, doesn't really come across as a people person. Maybe you could even say a little bit introverted. He's one of the most successful salespeople I have ever met, and one of, constantly giving me gems. And that's due to the last 2 points here: consistency and diligence. And, you're talking about somebody that, mashallah, built a $15 million company, not being an extrovert or not being necessarily a people person, but because he had that consistency and had that diligence, he was able to be as successful as he was. And, I was very fortunate to be under his tutelage and have him as a mentor throughout my sales career. And another reference that I just want to expand on within integrity, Ron Willingham, who was a very successful salesperson, wrote a book called The Integrity Selling in the 21st Century. And he broke down integrity into his own 5 subcategories. The first being your basic values about people and life, believing in your basic values about people and life. So assuming good about people. Again, this is rooted in prophetic traditions and prophetic teachings in terms of husn al-dhan, right? Assuming good about people, assuming good about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I think that believing in basic values about people and life, and assuming good about people and assuming good about the products that you're selling will allow you to be a lot more confident in terms of the product that you're selling, and will make your pitch a lot more effective. The second thing he mentions is feelings about the act of selling. So helping people versus manipulation, right? So if you are out with the intention, going back to intentions, if you're out with the intention to help people, then that's going to reflect again in how you're approaching your customer and how you're approaching your sale. But if you're looking to manipulate, right? And this is going to tie into emotional intelligence, which is going to be the second characteristic that I'm speaking to. But if you're using your high emotional intelligence or high sales skills to try to manipulate people to buy something that you don't necessarily believe is going to benefit them, then that's also going to reflect in the end goal, and that's going to be you making that one sale and not necessarily building a long-term relationship where that customer keeps coming back for more. So I think that being confident about your selling abilities and being in there for the right reasons is extremely important. Again, confidence in your ability is the third that he mentioned. Number 4 is commitment to selling, commitment to your approach, commitment to understanding the product that you're selling and the solution that you're selling. And the 5th, he mentions belief in the product that you're selling. So don't ever go out there and try to sell something that you don't believe in, because you're going to compromise your integrity. You're going to compromise the company that you're working for, and you're going to compromise your reputation. More importantly, as we move forward, this is probably going to be the section where I spend a lot of the time is on emotional intelligence, and it's a very important topic. And for all of the participants in this seminar, I would highly advise that you pick up the book and purchase the book with the Heart in Mind by Sheikh Mikhail Smith. And this all talks about EQ and emotional intelligence, and how this is rooted in prophetic teachings via the seerah of Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. And I think that it's very important within sales and closing the deal. It's very important to have a high level of emotional intelligence. So there's 3 basic factors within emotional intelligence. So identifying and understanding your own emotions. So I think that this is going to take the most time, is to be able to understand, come to terms, and fully comprehend, have a comprehensive outlook in terms of your emotions. How your emotions affect you on a day-to-day basis, how it affects your moods, what gets you going, right? What motivates you? What are the motivating factors? And understanding that dynamic and how that affects you on a day in and day out basis. Number 2, which is the flip side of emotional intelligence, is identifying and understanding others' emotions. So a big part of that is body language, having body intelligence. Things like, am I sitting back in my chair? What is that telling me about the person? Am I leaning forward? Am I slouched over? Am I standing upright? These things, being able to read these things will make your pitch, if you're in sales, a lot more effective. Eye contact. 7% of communication is the words that you say. 7% of communication is the actual words that you say. And that's why oftentimes when we're texting somebody, things get misinterpreted, right? Because they're only words. You don't know the mood that he's saying. You don't know if he's saying hi enthusiastically. You don't know if he's saying hi with a period, hi with an exclamation point. You don't know what that means. So a lot of things do get lost in translation via text. 7% of communication is words. 38% of communication is your body language, or your tone rather. And then 55% of communication is your body language. So being able to read somebody's body is extremely important, right? When you read a book, they say if you read so much, you're able to read between the lines. But if you're able to read people, you're able to read between people's body language, between their eye contact. Things like that are very important in terms of being able to, have a very effective pitch. And I think that one thing that was very valuable to me starting out in medical sales was receiving this neighborhood specialty summary. And it basically looks like this. It's a chart. It's a 2-sided chart. And it basically breaks people up into 4 different categories. You have analytics, you have drivers, you have amiables, and you have expressives. And I think that this is, whether you're in sales with customers or you're at home with your wife, I think this is one of the most effective tools in terms of, having effective communication, whether it's, your wife telling you that you're not helping out enough in the house, whether it's you having to convey a message to your wife, whether it's you having to convey a message to a physician that you're working with, wherever it is within your professional sphere. I think being able to identify where in those 4 quadrants the person that you're interacting with falls in is extremely powerful. I can try to somehow
for us again.
Sure. So it's analytic. So somebody could either be an analytic, a driver, an amiable, AMIABLE, or an expressive. And these things are basically identified based on different motivators. So macro motivators, mini motivators. It's broken up into growth, observable behaviors, and motivation. So somebody who is seeking respect is considered an analytic. Somebody who seeks control is, for example, a driver. Somebody who seeks support is an amiable. Somebody who's very social is an expressive. Somebody who seeks respect is an analytic. Somebody who seeks power is a driver. Somebody who seeks approval is an amiable. Somebody who seeks recognition is an expressive, and so on and so forth. And in terms of observable behaviors, it tells you, all right, if I'm somebody that always uses my hand to speak, this means that I'm a expressive. If I'm somebody who, has my hands on my laps, I'm not moving, I'm very stoic, then I'm an analytic. If I'm somebody that listens more than I speak, then I'm an analytic as well. I'm waiting for Ahmed to tell me something, to extract from what Ahmed is telling me, and then based on what he's telling me, I'm able to come to some kind of conclusion or give him some kind of solution. And that would make me an analytic, so on and so forth. This is extremely valuable. I could try to somehow get this to Ahmed, and he could blast this out to the emails.
Yeah, we could send it out afterwards.
Yeah, I think it's very valuable.
I think it's an important thing that you're saying. You got this sheet, and I assume you learned part of this from your mentors. These are, for people going into sales, there are lots and lots of tools. And I love that you brought up another book. I mentioned before, we could probably do a whole series just on the bookshelves of entrepreneurs or people like yourself you weren't the entrepreneur yourself, but you were basically driving the sales at an entrepreneurial business, which is very similar, especially being 100% commission, which is why I was asking you that. So yeah, it's definitely interesting. Be happy to share.
Absolutely. And then again, my last point here with emotional intelligence is pick up that book With the Heart in Mind. I think from a spiritual perspective, as well as from a interpersonal perspective, I think that you could learn a lot in terms of developing relationships and communicating very effectively. Some stats that I had here. So just remember that intrapersonal, again, is learning about yourself. Interpersonal is being able to identify and understand each other. So, interpersonal is me being able to identify and read what Ahmed is saying, or, Ahmed's body language, for example. So that's interpersonal. One of the things that Sheikh Mikhail Smith says in his book is that some people lack the emotional awareness necessary for positive interactions with others because they simply don't understand the language of emotions. He goes on to say, slight eye movements, body positioning, and verbal inflections are gestures that can communicate pain, anxiety, and joy. So it goes back to what I mentioned about body language and being able to, for example, know when to close, know when to push certain buttons. And in my field, personally, I've experienced a lot where I've seen some very atrocious sales strategies where, people just don't have that emotional intelligence to be able to identify when it's the right time to close a sale, when it's the right time to ask certain questions, when it's the right time to, try to call a doctor. Small things like that are very important in terms of developing a solid sales strategy. So, With the Heart in Mind has been very integral for me in terms of growing from a professional standpoint within sales and also in my personal life as well. So definitely pick up that book. Excuse me. The third quality that I think is very important in terms of closing the deal successfully is having patience. Again, going back to prophetic teachings, patience is something that's very often mentioned within that hadith. Patience is a very prevalent theme within the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions patience, sabr many times throughout the Quran. It's probably the most mentioned attribute that somebody could have, so much so that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala regards Rasulullah regards patience as a gift. It's a gift that somebody has, and we all know that in order to attain a gift, if I want Ahmed to gift me something for Eid, I have to work for that gift, right? I had to have done something good, or I had to exhibit some kind of good qualities. And very, very similarly with patience, it takes a lot of hard work. Sometimes patience is not intuitive. Sometimes it's not innate. It's something that we often have to work at. I was listening to a scholar a couple weeks back, and he said that, even in our day-to-day dealings, we should always exercise patience. So if you're in the grocery store and there's a 10 items or less express line, and then there's another line where there's people with 2 carts full of groceries, why don't you get on that line sometimes where there's 5 people with 2 carts of groceries each, and have that patience to stand in that line and exercise patience so that your patience becomes stronger, and put yourself in positions where you're able to exercise patience rather than taking the easy route. So I think that that's something that resonated with me. It's an everyday example that we have on a day-to-day basis. And, frankly, in the post-COVID era, patience is running thin. And I think that people are very impulsive, and people are very quick to want things very quickly, instant gratification, and also instant relief. And I think that being conscious of patience is something that would bode well both professionally and interpersonally as well. So work each step of the process. Don't take any shortcuts. It's very important within sales. Again, as salespeople, sometimes we tend to be very impulsive and just want to achieve that sale and want to skip the steps without doing the work. And then, we try to skip steps to find out that sale wasn't as successful as we wanted it to be. Very glaring fact here, 2% of sales are achieved on first contact. So if I'm going in to see Dr. Ahmed O'Keefe for the first time, I don't ever visit him again. I have a 2% chance of achieving a sale on that first visit and never seeing him again. 5% of sales are achieved on a third contact. So if I go in to see Dr. O'Keefe once, twice, follow up a third time, only 5% of sales happen on that third contact. Whereas 80% of sales are achieved from the 5th to the 12th contact. Personally speaking, I would say that it's somewhere in the range of 6 to 8. I think that's where a lot of my sales have happened. And that shows you the perseverance that you should have. It shows you the patience that you need to have to be a successful salesperson. It's a glaring number where 80% of sales, and it shows you that you have to be very committed to your craft. It shows you that you can't get complacent. It shows you that you cannot get discouraged. Transitioning from education over to medical sales, very early on, I would get discouraged. I'd get a bunch of no's. I'd get kicked out of operating rooms. I'd get cursed at. So it was very deflating very early on for me, but it allowed me to build thick skin. And again, going back to the fact that I had to learn a lot through trial and error, I learned that it takes 6, 7, 8, 10 times to make a sale, or not even make a sale, but gain somebody's trust to even have a conversation. I'm in certain situations where sales cycles are 12 to 18 months. So very early on, I'd have to sit in on hundreds of cases twice a week for 18 months for a physician to use my product. But I knew that at that 18-month mark, that physician was going to use my product because I was going to be a trusted advisor. I was going to show him that I knew my stuff, and I was going to show him that I could be trusted and that I was an expert in the product that I knew. And sometimes it took 16, 18 months to get that sale. And, of course, a lot of it is risk, and a lot of it is also being very opportunistic where, I was present, whereas my competitors weren't present, and I was able to outwork them, out-hustle them. Not only did I know my product, but I knew my competition's product. And that's what allowed me to be as successful as I was very early on, and then throughout my sales career now. So continue to be diligent, continue to have patience. Just because a doctor or a prospective client tells you no the first 3 times, continue to be diligent, continue to understand the dynamic that you're in, understand that person's world, put yourself in their shoes and try to understand, what is that person's pain point? What are they looking for? What are they lacking with their current solutions or their current products? And take time to really groom the prospective customer that you're looking to integrate a solution into. Don't get discouraged. If you could take anything from me, take the fact that I came from a completely, seemingly irrelevant profession into medical sales, and I had to grind my way through and learn a lot through that trial and error process. Get screamed at, get cursed at, get kicked out of operating rooms, and it really tested not only my patience, but it tested my confidence, really. And I think that was a big part of the game. And to end on patience, a hadith from the Prophet ﷺ found in Sahih Bukhari: "There's no gift that is better and more comprehensive than patience." Think about prayer, for example. In order for us to sit there and make 4 rak'at and completely focus with complete khushu', there's a level of patience. There's a foundation of patience there where we have to sit there, read Surah Al-Fatiha, then another surah, go into ruku', come back up, go into sujood, and repeat that 4 times. It takes a certain level of patience to sit there for 4 or 5 minutes. So allow that to translate into your everyday life, inshallah. Let's see if I have any other notes about patience. I do not. How are we doing on time, Brother Ahmed?
We are 39 minutes in, but
okay.
So if you are, I know your slide deck, so love
Yes.
to get through your remaining points, and then we'll open it up for Q&A.
I'm going to end here, inshallah. Closing the deal, after all I said, integrity and patience and emotional intelligence and all that good stuff, Mamba mentality at the end. You have to close the deal. Who better at it than Kobe Bryant? If you're a basketball fan, know that having that Mamba mentality entails many different things. So being confident, being able to shoot your shot. You don't know if you're going to win, but you have to ask for that business sometimes. Sometimes we get caught in that friend zone, and I've gotten caught in that friend zone many times where, I have great rapport with physicians. I think that we're kicking it off personally. We're having a great time. We're having dinner. We're, doing all these things out of work. And then, I forget to ask for the business. And that's what I'm there for. At the end of the day, I'm there to build relationships, but I'm there to meet my quota. I'm there to make commissions, and I'm there to make money. And sometimes you get caught in that friend zone because you're so focused on building that relationship that you forget to ask for that business. You don't know if you're going to get it, but you have to shoot your shot, and you have to be diligent, and you have to be consistent. And going back to all of the qualities that I previously mentioned, shooting your shot and being confident is, I think, go hand in hand. If you're not confident, you're not going to shoot your shot. So be confident in your ability to sell and go out there and shoot your shot, whether you're going to miss or you're going to make it. Be a leader, not a boss. Leaders show you the way, and bosses tell you what to do, right? You want to be a leader. You want to, I found personally great gratification in terms of being a coach and leading people within medical sales and having people under me that I was able to mentor and show them the way. And that was very gratifying to me. And I've come across a lot of managers in my time and a lot of supervisors who simply thought that they were bosses and would just give out commands. And, for people that were reporting to them, they weren't as receptive. It made for a bad sales culture, right? Trying to be a boss and not a leader. You're not showing me the way, you're just giving me commands. And that didn't really facilitate a good working environment. Being resilient, something that Kobe Bryant said was that everything negative, pressure, challenges is all an opportunity for me to rise. So don't shy away from obstacles. Don't shy away from challenges. Be resilient, work through the obstacles, and always see it as an opportunity to rise. See it as an opportunity to learn, even if you fail at it. But just know that you've worked hard enough to get to that next opportunity. And then, inshallah, on that next opportunity, you'll be successful. And then lastly, have winning tendencies. So winning tendencies entails going to the gym every day, putting in the work on your craft, doing your homework on the prospective customers, doing a lot of your pre-call planning, understanding analytics within medical sales or whatever sales profession that you're in. And again, shoot your shot. I think that concludes my presentation, and I hope that it was beneficial. Subhanallah wa bihamdih, ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant.
Thank you, brother. So at this time, if anybody is watching on YouTube and you want to type in a question to the comments section, we'll try to read through there. I see there's one there. I'll get to that in a moment. And if you are in Zoom and you want to speak, I would love for you to raise your hand or something else, and I can then ask you to unmute, and we'd be happy to hear your questions live. Pending that, I'm going to go ahead and look at the questions online on YouTube. So first one here is, when you were turned away from these attempts, what was it, aside from passion, that drove you to continue from an Islamic or personal standpoint?
Repeat the question, I'm sorry.
So basically, as you got turned away, what drove you?
Mm-hmm. I think it was just my competitive nature, coming from a coaching background and coming from a background of being an athlete. It was the competitive nature in me that continued to want me to come back. I think that also going back to my belief in the product that I was selling and having that integrity was something that had me wanting to go back. And it was the challenge in terms of being able to try to integrate a solution into a practice that I believed in, that the doctor didn't necessarily believe in, that had me coming back and always having patient care in the back of my mind is the number one goal that I had in terms of affecting patients on an everyday basis.
I'm going to go to the next person to ask a question. Do you have any specific books other than those you've already mentioned on sales that you would recommend?
Yeah, traditional books like Challenger, Miller Hyman books. Those are very traditional books, and they have gems in them. But I haven't really relied on them too much. I won't lie to you. I haven't read them cover to cover. They do have a lot of practical as well as very technical advices in those books, but I haven't really. It's not something that I've relied on a great deal. I've relied heavily on my very early experiences of developing my own sales processes. Not that I'm an expert, not that I'm the greatest salesperson in the world, but it's something that's worked for me. I highly advise reading different articles within the Harvard Business Review. I think that rather than reading books, they have extremely valuable articles in the Harvard Business Review that I think that you folks will find great value in.
Another question here from Miss Jana. What tips would you recommend to build and strengthen the self into the Mamba mentality?
I think, being confident and having winning tendencies. If I could take 2 bullet points out of my last slide, is being confident and having winning tendencies. And going back to winning tendencies is working on your craft day in day out. Having expert knowledge on the product that you're selling and having confidence in the product that you're selling. It's very visible to prospective customers, whether you know exactly what you're talking about or you're, a little wishy-washy, and they read right through that stuff. So if you're able to go in there and not only know your product, know your competition, know the landscape of the entire market, I think those things will make you very successful, and you'll be sought after as an expert. Again, surgeons and physicians that are not necessarily using my products are contacting me and asking me about, the landscape of the market. What are some of the new, technologies in the market that they could possibly integrate? And a lot of those things are because very early on I put the work in and I continue to read up on, industry trends and things of that nature. So always work on your craft on a day in and day out basis.
Another question here from another questioner. How do you calculate a new business risk? Do you use instinct as well?
In terms of business risks, I think that is determined, and I identify those things. A lot of those things are very rooted, again, going back into emotional intelligence, being able to know when to take certain risks within sales, knowing, I'm not sure if the questioner is asking whether going into a sale or actually trying to implement the product, but in terms of approaching a sale, I think that emotional intelligence is very important, and also being diligent is very important in terms of qualifying your opportunities. Because you don't want to not qualify your opportunity, put in work for 6 to 8 months, all to find out that
Tell us about qualifying opportunities, because that might be a new concept to some people, especially if people are brand new to running their own business and being in charge of their own sales. This might be a foreign concept. So if you could share anything on that, that'd be great.
Yeah. So qualifying opportunities is doing, doing your homework about the opportunity or the prospective customer that you're looking to deal with. So making sure that not only they're an appropriate customer, but making sure that your solution is an appropriate solution for their practice or their business. Or, for example, within Salam Sports, for example, I've been asked to be a partner in different things, or folks have looked to partner with Salam Sports on different events or different initiatives, and I have to qualify those opportunities and make sure that, number one, our goals align. Number two, they're not going to be compromising the mission of the organization. And I think that very similarly within the professional world, it's very important to qualify those opportunities as well, to make sure that, I think the most important thing, that the goals align in terms of solution to end user are aligning in terms of what they're looking to achieve at the end of the day.
Another question. How did you deal with the technical and knowledge part when transitioning from being a teacher to a medical field? I know you talked about this is a steep learning curve, and it seems daunting. So how did you approach that?
Having the winning tendencies, putting in the work, watching a lot of videos, understanding the anatomy of the body, and understanding the anatomy of the spine and the knee, and sitting in on cases. Like, I could sit in front of a screen all day in front of different modules and try to learn something like I'm reading out of a book back in college. But for me, what was most valuable was actually sitting in on cases in the operating room of orthopedic surgeons that were reconstructing an ACL, for example, in all different types of ways, using all different types of products, so that I was able to troubleshoot a lot more effectively for a doctor that was using my product, or somebody that, a physician that was looking for my advice on something was going wrong within the operating room. And, hey, Adam, how do I try to implant this product, for example? So it was a lot of me being a sponge and sitting in and putting in countless hours within the operating room, and just being a fly on the wall in a lot of operating rooms, and putting in that work, for multiple months, 8 to 12 months. I again sit in on cases where physicians weren't necessarily using my product, but I learned a great deal, and I was a better salesperson for it.
Another questioner is asking, how is Slump Sports business going these days?
It's going well. Things are a little stagnant.
Yeah, of course, right?
Yep. So I've
not live event time this year.
Exactly. So, a lot of youth have reached out to me multiple times to nauseam in terms of resuming activities, and I don't want to put them in a predicament where, God forbid, they take something home because they contracted COVID and it goes back home to one of their elderly parents or relatives, and I don't want to have that liability. Yeah. So, excuse me, I've had to have very difficult conversations with a lot of the youth, and even the adults. For the adult league, basketball league that I run, almost weekly, I'm receiving messages and texts about resuming the season, but it's tough.
So I think I've gone through everybody else's questions, so I think it's my turn now.
Okay.
So if you're ready. So you went over at the beginning when we were talking about integrity, the having the right intention, following through on your words. And I wonder if you could talk more about how you were experiencing that at the beginning. I mean, for me, what's very interesting about your story into medical sales is that you not only were brand new to it, but you were with a brand new company. And while I'm assuming the products weren't your own, they were somebody else's products through the distributorship, you still had you had that double hurdle of yourself not being brand new and then your distributorship being brand new. Maybe I'm mistaken on that last part, but just curious how, the needs to make money, the cash flow needs that you definitely would have coming from a stable paycheck to 100% commission, and just the whole learning curve. How did you manage through that, keeping your intention straight and following through on your words? What words are you offering? How did you just tell us about that? Give us an example to sort of, I suppose, inspire others. I mean, without having to put the burden on you to inspire everyone, right? But like, it's a challenge. So I just hoping you could tell us a little more about your experience there.
Yeah, you're not mistaken. It was a startup distributorship, and with that being said, there was a lot of flexibility there because we didn't know our head from our toes. We were still, in the company's own right. There was a lot of trial and error being done, and the luxury of being with a startup distributorship or distributorship in general is that we have the flexibility to go out and seek the contracts that we wanted to seek. So, we sought out the products that we wanted to sell and the products that we believed would be good solutions for our book of business. So, for me personally, I knew that my goals and the company goals aligned very closely, and I knew that they wouldn't bring on a product that lacked the integrity that we needed to go out and sell the product, and they didn't bring on any products that they didn't necessarily believe in. And I was involved in that decision-making process very early on as well, because we started off with 2 reps. It was the CEO, the COO, and 2 reps, and I was one of the founding reps. And then, we were able to build to about a 15 rep sales force. And so very early on, I was involved in that decision-making process in terms of bringing on the right products, the appropriate products that we knew were cutting edge and would be a value add, frankly, to the book of business that we had. We didn't want any Me Too products. We wanted differentiating products that would provide value for patients and for facilities and surgeons. And there was certainly a huge vetting process in terms of bringing on different products. And that's the way I approached my day-to-day sales as well, in terms of, again, approaching it with that high level of integrity and making sure that it reflected in my day-to-day interactions with, not only surgeons, but gatekeepers or, front desk girls or office managers. So I made sure that I was able to develop relationships from everybody from the front desk girl all the way up to the surgeon or the physician and everybody in between, and made them feel involved. And I think that was a big part of my early success, was developing rapport at different levels. Not making the office manager feel any less than the surgeon, not making the front desk girl feel any less than the PA or the MA that was dealing with patients on an everyday basis. So developing that rapport on different levels was very important for me and effective for me early on.
Excellent. If anybody else has questions, love to have another person chime in from the audience if possible, but barring that, I will ask another question. Give them a moment though. With Medline, are you now, is that similarly picking their own products, or is there a suite of products that they're offering specifically?
Yeah, so Medline is a little bit more of an established company. They are a privately held company. We do about $20 billion in sales per year, and we've kind of been at the forefront of the entire COVID scene in terms of providing PPE as a manufacturer and a distributor. So in terms of the products that we have at Medline, it's everything from disposables and consumables, so gloves, table paper, needles and syringes, all the way up to more complex products like lab point of care products, capital equipment, diagnostic equipment, inventory management solutions. So anything that you can think of within the framework of a physician's office, a hospital, surgery center, nursing home, we either make or distribute. So I carry the entire bag. I personally try to focus most of my time on some of the more complex sales, because those are frankly where I develop most of my relationships. Is speaking about some of the more clinical and technical products, bringing in innovative solutions to physicians, such as lab products, where if you go in to get a blood sample drawn, Dr. Jack sends your blood sample out to LabQuest or Corp or LabCorp, and it takes a number of days for your sample to come back, for them to read your CMPs and your glucose and your A1Cs. Now the market is trending towards keeping these things in-house and being able to test for these things within the office itself, being reimbursed for it, and also providing patients their results at the point of care. So that's kind of where I focus a lot of my time. Awesome.
So we do have one more question we'll get to. And if I mispronounce your name, it's Safiullah Chowdhury, if I'm not mistaken. If I am mistaken, I apologize. But they wrote, Salam Adam, amazing job tonight. Question for you. Have you ever been in a situation where Dean and business collided? And if so, how did you handle that?
That's a great question. I had an interview with a company earlier on. They asked me something similar, where if I was ever put in a position where I had to compromise my integrity for the sake of making a sale. Physicians oftentimes cross the lines and want you to do things that are in the gray area, and it's very tempting to say yes, but it's also very dangerous to say yes, both from a religious standpoint and from a legal standpoint. So you can't tread the line too much, and I have been put in those positions a few times. I'm not going to say plenty of times, but a few times, and I also always try to keep in mind first and foremost to be conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in everything that I do. And I think that it's very important to be conscious in our day-to-day dealings, whether it's with people, with customers, in our professional life, to be very conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, know that He's watching, and to take on the prophetic traditions of emotional intelligence. And you'd be very surprised, if you open up the book and read the seerah of the Prophet Muhammad alayhi salam, you could extract so much from it that you could implement into your life, both professionally and socially. So to answer the question, I have been put in those positions, and I've always sided with not compromising my religious beliefs.
Okay. Well, thank you, Brother Adam. I'm going to go ahead and conclude us here. It's 9 o'clock, so we've reached our hour. I appreciate your time and everyone in the audience's time. First of all, I didn't do this earlier. I am sorry about the reschedule happening with such short notice. Unfortunately, I was sick earlier in the week, and I believe there were some other issues. But I want to let you know that next week, we are going to be having our presentation on Friday. Bear with me 1 second. I lost the schedule for a moment. Friday, December 11th at 6 p.m., we have Sister Jenna Williams. She'll be on the topic of Know Your Numbers. And I've seen her presentation give us a lot of information about getting our financials straight as we start our new entrepreneurial ventures. So I encourage everyone to check that out. Friday of next week at 6 p.m. Until then, inshallah, assalamu alaikum. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. Assalamu alaikum. Good night.
Amazing job. Amazing job.
Thank you.
Thank you.